The Witcher 3 is, in my opinion, a masterpiece. It's a colossal game that shines in nearly every department: plot, characters, graphics, music, gameplay. While it undoubtedly has flaws, The Witcher 3's heavy atmosphere and sophisticated narrative make it a video gaming achievement in emotional storytelling. While the characters and plot are stellar, I thought it would be appropriate to pay tribute to one of the game's great strengths: its world. The Witcher 3, through its complex and fleshed out world and atmosphere, is able to immerse and pull the gamer in better than nearly every game I've ever played. This video series will try to point out just how the game is able to do this so well. A video game, unlike a movie, book, or anime, has the watcher as an active participant in the story. As such, video games that are done well can completely immerse the player and make them forget that they're playing a game, almost making them believe that they are truly in a living and breathing world. The Witcher 3 is not perfect in this aspect, but it's nearly there. It achieves phenomenal immersion through both world building and little bits of visual or audio cues that just add little bits of flavor to the setting that slowly add up over time. Immersion and world building are two distinct and different aspects of a video game, but they're totally interconnected. What I mean by this is the more you learn about the world of Witcher 3, and the more political, geographical, economical, and emotional detail that's given to the setting, the more immersed the player would be. In addition, tiny tidbits of narrative information are thrown to the player throughout the game, and you can choose to totally ignore these tidbits, but the players that take in everything will be truly rewarded. On the marshy countryside, a woman cries out over a burnt house. A dirty child audibly wonders if they're going to be beaten today. A Skellige native, upon hearing that his son has died, sadly walks over to the dock and lets out a howl of grief, and Geralt is unable to do anything. A Nilfgaardian soldier laments that he dearly misses his home, driving home the fact that this world is full of good and bad on every side, and nothing is truly black or white. These scenes are little bits of flavor that add nothing to the plot, but they're so vital because when added up, they subconsciously teach and invest the player in the world so well. In this video series, I will be talking about the distinct regions of The Witcher 3 and what makes them so different from one another, in the political, economic, narrative, thematic, and atmospheric sense. I'm also going to touch on just how the different aspects of the settings contribute to the story of the game as a whole. In this video, I'll be starting with the bogs, swamps, and war-torn poverty of Velen. Velen is one of the most detailed, emotional, and atmospheric locations in a game that I've ever seen. In my opinion, as a whole, the stories that are told in Velen are among the most emotional and well-crafted that The Witcher 3 has to offer. It's just so rich. CD Projekt Red integrates so many little details to build a living, breathing world in Velen. The music, the visuals, the monsters, the war, the tragedy, and most of all, the realism of Velen is just staggering. Velen is seriously somber as far as settings go, and the war between Nilfgaard and Redania is a significant part of the reason for that. With Nilfgaard invading from the south and Redania camped out in the north, Velen finds itself directly in the middle of two huge tyrannical warring nations. The result is not good. Through the ceaseless battles and bloodshed, Velen has become a no man's land. It was never the most prosperous land in the world, and was always a spot of conflict between Redania and Temeria, yet things are at an all-time low in The Witcher 3. War has ravaged this place, brought poverty, famine, death, and misery. The two warring nations extract what little resources this place has, and the citizens are left with nothing. Yet, tragically, most of them cannot leave. Passes are required to cross into Novigrad and Oxenfurt, and even then, the average Velen citizen would find it extremely difficult to even begin carving out a life in a big city with their meager means. Everyone is in a constant struggle to survive, just crawling their way through life, trying to do anything to see another day. When you get so many desperate individuals in one setting, in a world as believable and rich as The Witcher 3, you're bound to learn some depressing things about the dark side of humanity. We do indeed learn, and some of it is knowledge that you wish you never knew. People stoop to incredible lows in Velen. Desperate hope is taken advantage of, fanaticism to religion and gods is taken to new levels. Some of the situations that show themselves in Velen hit as hard as they do because they're simply brutally inevitable given humanity's tendency to go to extremes in times of desperation. As you go into Novigrad and Oxenfurt territory, where the war hasn't really yet made its mark, the living conditions start to improve, but the vast majority of Velen is devastated by war and famine, and by extension, selfishness, desperation, and dishonesty. Velen's tone and atmosphere is completely dependent on the political world building that The Witcher 3 establishes. Without knowing about the politics of the world and Velen's place in it, the player cannot fully comprehend just what type of setting this is, and therefore won't be as deeply affected by certain story moments as they should. I suppose then that it's a good thing that The Witcher 3's world building is nearly flawless, allowing Velen to do what it does so well naturally. Being thrown into Velen at the start of the game was a great choice, because the tone that presents itself in Velen through the use of music, visuals, and story beats is so distinct and immersive. Velen is, in a word, depressing. Because of this dreary tone, during my first playthrough, I felt sort of oddly fascinated and repulsed at the same time at Velen. It was like there was a filter of something dark wherever I went. I'm not sure how to explain it, but due to the darkness and bleakness of Velen, there was just a sense of rot and decay. It almost felt like navigating Velen was like wading through some invisible muck created by all the evil in this land. And while that sounds like a bad thing, it's the type of thing that I personally enjoy immensely, so I could hardly put the controller down throughout all of Velen. The game had me. Velen had taken hold of me and was not letting go. I wanted to learn as much as possible about this horrible place simply because it was so rich and interesting. This is just my personal experience with Velen, though I know for a fact that others feel this way too. Along with the tone presented through the world building, the monsters that you hunt in Velen fit perfectly for the type of setting they reside in. Werewolves, women in white, evil witches, woodland spirits, and necrophages. Enemies like this are tailor-made for a dark and dreary woodland marsh. I can't even put into words how thrilling and atmospheric it was for me to simply prepare and hunt evil for contracts as the trees creaked in the wind and rain lashed down in a sort of classic, dark and stormy night fashion. In addition to the monsters, the visual and type of geographical style Velen has is unique and integrates with the themes and tone of the setting perfectly. No matter where you go in Velen, you'll see scorched, infertile lands, muddy swamps, or miasmic bogs. It's just a purely miserable place to be in. Along with the atmosphere set by the type of region that Velen is, so many small locations in Velen just add to the dark themes and eerie, ominous atmosphere that this place has. Locations like the Hangman's Tree, the Inn at the Crossroads, the Orphans of Crookback Bog, Crow's Perch. These locations are not only iconic and add some brutal or unsettling imagery, but they set a tone for Velen through visual storytelling. When our journey in Velen starts, we start with Geralt right next to the Hangman's Tree. Just a glance at this brutal scene illustrates what's at stake and sets an ominous tone which doesn't ever really let up. Another example is Crow's Perch. We learn through the story that this stronghold owned by the Bloody Baron is essentially the heart of Velen, so one would naturally expect Crow's Perch to be a sort of wealthy central hub. However, it's clear that this is not the case. Crow's Perch is not very different from the poorest villages in Velen, and this harshness is accentuated when the player sees the Baron living comfortably in his mini castle. The people mean nothing in Velen, and it's not fun to slowly learn this. However, all of these elements are ingredients that, when added together, create a tone and atmosphere that's definitely depressing and dark, yet all the more engaging and ironically beautiful because of how immersive Velen is and how richly the region is portrayed. The political backdrop, world building, and atmosphere that CD Projekt Red masterfully crafts in Velen provides the perfect foundation for some quite legendary storytelling. The Witcher 3 is driven by its story, and the amount of care put into this story is insane. However, I'd like to isolate Velen's story quests specifically here, because there's a distinct contrast in tone and storytelling style between Velen and the game's other regions. The stories in Velen in particular focus on themes of pragmatism fueled by primal survival instinct. Everyone in this shithole of a region understandably wants to do anything, everything to get ahead and carve out a happier place for them in the world. This is such a deeply personal and intimate theme because nearly anyone can relate to it. We all want happiness for ourselves and our loved ones, so when faced with the excruciating challenge of living in Velen, who's to say that we wouldn't act similarly to how these people would? This theme is so important to not just Velen, but The Witcher 3 as a whole, because when it manifests in the characterization of some individuals, they sink to the absolute depths of human nature, and delve into some true evil, and scarily, perhaps some evil that we see in ourselves. Here, I will go into a few quests that stuck with me for one reason or another. I won't be going into too much detail, but I will try to explain why these quests are so well designed, and how their themes add to Velen as a setting and a story. The side quest called A Towerful of Mice, part of the Kira Metz quest chain, is one of the most underrated in the game. This quest is centered around Fyke Isle, a small island with a single tower residing on it. It involves a greedy lord who stowed himself and a select few in this tower to survive after famine strikes the land. The peasants and townsfolk on the mainland are understandably unhappy, so they decide to storm the tower and take their revenge quite a bit too far. It involves a bittersweet romance story, a commentary on the economic state that the war has brought on, and has an emphasis on people just being terrible through their desperation. It's also one of the first times in the game where the player makes a choice that they believe is the lesser of two evils, and then realize that that choice was more impactful than they imagined. The villain, and I say that in quotations, of the story is intriguing, and the whole story is grotesque and eerie. The atmosphere is masterfully creepy. It's a small little story that focuses so much on the far-reaching implications that the war has had, and demonstrates absolute extremes in terms of how far man will go to ensure survival, which falls directly in line with Velen's thematic impact. One of the story elements throughout the whole game that stuck with me the most was anything to do with the Crones of Crookback Bog. The way these three witches were designed, written, and realized is simply incredible. Weavis, Wispus, and Brewis were otherworldly and amazing, and from the moment they were introduced to the story, I found myself playing through the game in a sort of trance, trying to learn more about them. The Ladies of the Wood, no doubt created using classic Western and medieval European ideas with regards to witchcraft and horror, fit into Velen's setting beautifully. They've taken advantage of the desperation shared by the citizens of the nearby village of Downwarren, and have created a whole sacrificial, pagan, godlike culture based around them. The sadistic trail of treats that adults use to lure their children into the bog in exchange for bountiful harvest, the human ears that reside tied to the trees of the woods, the eerie music, the children, and the witches themselves, it all added up to a quest that was eerie, atmospheric, and completely engrossing. Everything about the Crones was unbelievably done. The character design and voice acting associated with these ladies was nothing short of phenomenal. The way the lore associated with them blended in seamlessly with the world of Witcher 3 and Velen in particular, I'll simply never forget about my first experience with the Crones. Last but certainly not least, I feel like I should pay tribute to the Bloody Baron character. I won't really dive too much into his character, as there might be a separate character analysis video for him in the future, but it would be criminal to talk about Velen and leave out Philip Strenger. Opinions on this man differ depending on who you ask, and opinions on his character vary on a wide spectrum. I've heard that the Baron was evil and irredeemable, and I've also heard that he's a good and totally redeemable guy at heart, and everything in between. The Bloody Baron is a man that divides opinion, but one thing that is for certain is that he's fantastically written, deep and complex. The reason that there are so many viewpoints on this man is because there's so much to his character. He is undisputably and unequivocally human, and although your opinion on him may differ depending on your moral standpoint, the game's narrative gives plenty of evidence for any argument regarding this man's character. While his determination to redeem his past evils was indeed admirable, his past evils themselves are the problem. At what point does a man truly become irredeemable, regardless of circumstance? Themes of pure desperation, salvation, family, dark humanity, and living with past actions are all explored in great detail thanks to the Baron. He is, in my opinion, one of the best written and fully realized characters in the entire game, perhaps the most human character, and his presence is a huge reason as to why Velen is so memorable. Velen is undisputably a terrible, horrid place. It's bleak, dark, and depressing, and through this horrible environment, The Witcher 3 does some brilliant exploration of the darker side of humanity. Yet, at the same time, CD Projekt Red has created an area that is also moving and ironically beautiful in its startling realism. Velen as a whole is amazingly well done, and one of the best locations I've ever explored in a video game.